Charlotte adjusted her veil one last time, and the car mirror. Her hands trembled slightly, but not from nerves. It was pure anticipation. After 2 years of dating and 6 months of preparation, she would finally marry Thomas. Today is the day, she whispered to herself, touching the pearl necklace that had belonged to her grandmother. Hey there. Thanks for being here. Leave a like, subscribe, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what you think of the story. Let's keep going. The driver stopped in front of Thomas's Victorian house, where the intimate ceremony would take place. Charlotte had insisted on something simple, just close family and a few friends. Thomas had readily agreed, always so understanding, always so perfect. She stepped out of the car, her silk dress whispering against her legs. The house was strangely quiet. No cars in the driveway, no movement in the windows. Perhaps the guests hadn't arrived yet. Charlotte climbed the porch steps, her heart racing. The front door was slightly ajar. Strange. Thomas was meticulous about security. Thomas, she called, pushing the door open. What she found weren't flowers, decorations, or waiting guests. In the entrance hall, two small children huddled against the wall. A girl about 7 years old held the hand of a smaller boy, both with dirty clothes and wide, frightened eyes. The girl looked up at Charlotte and whispered, "Are you the lady in the pretty dress he said would come?" Charlotte felt her world beginning to crumble. Charlotte stood frozen in the doorway, her wedding dress suddenly feeling like a costume for a play that had been canceled. The two children stared at her with a mixture of hope and fear that made her heart ache. "Where is Thomas?" she asked gently, kneeling down to their eye level despite her elaborate gown. The little boy, who couldn't have been more than 5, buried his face against his sister's shoulder. The girl, Lucy, Charlotte would later learn, spoke in a voice barely above a whisper. "He left this morning. Said he had to go away for a while." She paused, her small fingers fidgeting with a torn piece of fabric on her dress. "He said a nice lady would come and take care of us." Charlotte's mind raced. This made no sense. Thomas had never mentioned children, not his own, not relatives, not anyone. They had talked about having kids someday, but these children were clearly not babies he could have forgotten to mention. "What are your names?" Charlotte asked, sitting cross-legged on the hardwood floor, her veil pulling around her like a white cloud. "I'm Lucy, and this is my brother Jamie," the girl replied, her protective arm tightening around the boy. "We've been waiting for you since yesterday." "Since yesterday?" Charlotte's voice cracked. "You've been alone here since yesterday." Lucy nodded solemnly. "Thomas left some crackers and juice boxes in the kitchen, but Jamie has been crying because he's hungry and scared." Charlotte felt a surge of anger mixed with confusion. How could Thomas abandon children? How could he leave them alone on what was supposed to be their wedding day? And most importantly, who were these children? She stood up, her mind shifting into a protective mode she didn't know she possessed. "Are you hungry now?" Both children nodded eagerly. "Okay," Charlotte said, her voice steadier than she felt. "Let's go to the kitchen and see what we can find." As she led them down the hallway, Charlotte noticed a detail she had somehow missed in all her previous visits to Thomas's house. Children's drawings on the refrigerator, small shoes by the back door, a child's jacket hanging on a hook that seemed too low for an adult. How had she been so blind? In the kitchen, she found the remnants of the children's meager meals, empty juice boxes and cracker crumbs. Her heart broke at the sight. She opened the refrigerator and began pulling out ingredients for sandwiches. "Lucy," she said as she worked, "how long have you and Jamie been living here?" "A few weeks, I think." Lucy watched Charlotte with curious eyes. "Are you really going to take care of us? Thomas said you were very kind." Charlotte paused, a jar of peanut butter in her hands. Thomas had planned this, somehow. He had known she would come here today, had known she would find these children, and had counted on her kindness. But why? And where was he? "Yes," she heard herself saying, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "I'm going to take care of you." As she made sandwiches for Lucy and Jamie, Charlotte caught sight of her reflection in the kitchen window, still in her wedding dress, still wearing her grandmother's pearls. But somehow everything had changed. The woman looking back at her was no longer a bride-to-be. She was something else entirely, something she was only beginning to understand. After the children had eaten their sandwiches and fallen asleep on the living room couch, Charlotte finally allowed herself to process what was happening. She had called her maid of honor, Sarah, to cancel everything. The flowers, the small reception, the photographer. Each conversation had been excruciating. "Charlotte, what do you mean Thomas is gone?" Sarah had asked, her voice sharp with concern. "I don't know, Sarah. I can't explain it right now." Now, in the quiet of Thomas's house, Charlotte began to really look around. How had she missed so much? The child-sized furniture pushed into corners, the extra toothbrushes in the bathroom, the cartoon drawings stuck to the refrigerator with alphabet magnets. She climbed the stairs to the second floor, her wedding dress rustling with each step. The master bedroom she had seen before. But there were two other doors she had never thought to open. Thomas had always guided her away from this part of the house. During her visits, the first door revealed a small bedroom with two twin beds. Children's clothes were scattered on the floor, and stuffed animals sat on the pillows. On the nightstand, Charlotte found a small notebook. She opened it carefully. Lucy's handwriting. Careful and deliberate. Day 12. Thomas said Mama is coming back soon. Jamie cried again today. I told him the story about the princess like Mama used to. Charlotte's hands trembled as she flipped through more pages. Day 18. Thomas got angry. When Jamie wet the bed, he said we need to be good or the nice lady won't want us. Day 23. I found a picture of the nice lady. She's very pretty, Thomas says. She has a kind heart. Charlotte sank onto one of the small beds. Thomas had been planning this for weeks. But planning what, exactly? And who was their mother? She heard a small voice from downstairs. "Miss Charlotte?" Charlotte hurried down to find Lucy standing in the living room, rubbing her eyes. Jamie was still curled up on the couch, thumb in his mouth. "I'm here, sweetie," Charlotte said, kneeling beside her. "Are you going to leave us too?" Lucy's voice was so small, so vulnerable. "No," Charlotte said firmly. "I'm not going anywhere." Lucy studied her face for a long moment, then nodded. "Thomas said you would say that. He said you never break promises." A chill ran down Charlotte's spine. How well did Thomas know her? How long had he been watching her, studying her, planning this moment? "Lucy, can you tell me about your mama? Where is she?" Lucy's face clouded over. "She went away. Thomas said she couldn't take care of us anymore, so he would until you came." "When did she go away?" "A long time ago, before we came here." Lucy picked at a loose thread on her shirt. "Thomas said she was sick and needed to go to a special place to get better." Charlotte felt a knot forming in her stomach. Nothing about this made sense. If these children needed care, there were proper channels, official ways to handle the situation. Why would Thomas take them? Why would he plan to leave them with her? Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Stop asking questions. Some things are better left alone." Charlotte's blood ran cold. Someone was watching. Someone knew she was here. Knew she was trying to understand. She looked at Lucy, who was now sitting beside her sleeping brother, gently stroking his hair. These children needed protection, and somehow, Charlotte had become their only shield against whatever darkness Thomas had left behind. She deleted the text message and made a decision. Tomorrow, she would start looking for real answers. Tonight, she would simply be what these children needed, a safe harbor in a storm they didn't understand. But as she tucked them into their beds upstairs, Charlotte couldn't shake the feeling that she was being pulled into something much larger and more dangerous than a simple case of abandoned children. Thomas had chosen her for this role. The question was, why? Charlotte woke to the sound of Jamie crying. The unfamiliar surroundings of Thomas's guest room disoriented her for a moment before reality crashed back. She had slept in her slip after finally removing her wedding dress, which now hung like a ghost in the corner of the room. "It's okay, sweetheart." She heard Lucy's voice through the thin walls. "Charlotte is here. She won't leave us." The tenderness in the 7-year-old's voice as she comforted her little brother brought tears to Charlotte's eyes. These children had learned to take care of each other in ways that broke her heart. After getting dressed in clothes she kept in Thomas's closet for weekend visits, Charlotte found the children in the kitchen. Lucy was attempting to pour cereal into bowls while Jamie sat at the table, his face streaked with dried tears. "Good morning," Charlotte said softly, taking over the breakfast preparations. "Did you sleep okay?" "Jamie had a bad dream," Lucy explained, matter-of-factly. "He dreams about Mama sometimes." As Charlotte prepared breakfast, she studied the kitchen more carefully. Yesterday, she had been focused on feeding the children. Now she noticed other details. A second set of car keys hanging by the door that she had never seen before, a calendar on the wall marked with appointments in a woman's handwriting, not Thomas's. "Lucy, was there a lady who lived here before?" Charlotte asked carefully. Lucy nodded, her spoon clinking against her cereal bowl. "Miss Emma. She was nice. She made pancakes on Sundays." "What happened to Miss Emma?" "She went away too." Lucy's voice grew smaller. "Thomas said she had to leave because she wasn't the right lady for us." Charlotte felt her stomach drop. How many women had Thomas brought into these children's lives? How many had he made promises to, only to make them disappear when they no longer served his purpose? She excused herself and searched through Thomas's home office while the children watched cartoons. In the desk drawers, she found fragments of a life she had never known existed, phone bills with calls to numbers she didn't recognize, credit card statements showing purchases at toy stores and children's clothing shops, purchases made months before Charlotte had ever heard mention of any children. Hidden behind the stack of files, she discovered a small photo album. The first picture showed Thomas with a blonde woman Charlotte didn't recognize, both of them smiling with Lucy and Jamie at what looked like a park. The woman, Emma, presumably, looked genuinely happy, her arms wrapped around the children as if they were her own. Further into the album, Charlotte found pictures of Thomas with another woman, a brunette, also with the children, then another woman, and another. Her hands shook as she counted 5 different women, all photographed with Thomas and the children over what appeared to be the past year, all looking happy, all looking like they believed they were part of a real family. "Charlotte?" Lucy's voice called from the living room. "Can we go to the park today? Thomas always promised he would take us, but he never did." Charlotte closed the album quickly, her mind reeling. She was just the latest in a series of women Thomas had manipulated. But why? What was his endgame? Her phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. "You're making the same mistake they all made. Walk away while you can." This time, Charlotte didn't delete the message. Instead, she screenshot it and began typing a response. "Who are you? What happened to the other women?" The reply came immediately. "Meet me at Riverside Park, noon. Come alone. The children will be safe for an hour." Charlotte stared at her phone, her heart pounding. Someone had answers, but they wanted to meet in person. Someone who knew about the other women, who knew about Thomas's pattern. "Miss Charlotte," Jamie's small voice made her jump. He was standing in the doorway of the office, his thumb in his mouth. "Are you sad like Mama was?" Charlotte knelt down and pulled him into a gentle hug. "No, sweetheart, I'm not sad. I'm just trying to figure some things out." But as she held Jamie close, Charlotte realized she was more than sad. She was angry. Angry at Thomas for his deception. Angry at herself for being so blind. And most of all, angry that these innocent children had been used as pawns in whatever twisted game Thomas was playing. At noon, she would get answers, and then she would decide what to do next. Charlotte left Lucy and Jamie with Mrs. Henderson, the elderly neighbor who had eagerly offered to watch them. When Charlotte mentioned needing to run an errand, The woman's kindness seemed genuine, and the children appeared comfortable with her, suggesting they had met before. Riverside Park was nearly empty at noon on a Tuesday. Charlotte sat on the designated bench near the playground, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Every few minutes, she checked her phone for the time. Her anxiety growing with each passing minute. She turned to see a woman approaching. Mid-30s with auburn hair and tired eyes, she looked familiar, though Charlotte couldn't place where she might have seen her. "I'm Rebecca," the woman said, sitting down beside her. "I was Thomas's. Well, I suppose you could say I was in your position about 6 months ago." Charlotte studied Rebecca's face. "You were one of the women in the photos, the blonde in the blue dress." "Yes." Rebecca's smile was bitter. "I see you found his little trophy collection. What happened? Where did you go?" Rebecca was quiet for a long moment, watching a mother push her toddler on the nearby swings. "I lasted 3 months, longer than most. I really thought I could save those kids. You know, Lucy and Jamie get under your skin so fast. They're not his children, are they?" "No." Rebecca's voice was barely above a whisper. "Their mother was named Sarah Mitchell. She was my sister." Charlotte felt the world tilt slightly. "Your sister, Sarah, had some problems. Depression, mostly. But it got worse after her husband died. She couldn't cope with the kids anymore." Rebecca wiped at her eyes. "I was living across the country, trying to get custody. But the legal process was taking forever. That's when Thomas appeared." "How?" "He worked for a private placement agency, completely legitimate on the surface. He convinced Sarah that he could find a temporary family for Lucy and Jamie, while she got the help she needed. She trusted him." Rebecca's hands clenched into fists. He was supposed to be helping her, not stealing her children. Charlotte felt sick. "Where is she now?" "Dead." The word hung heavy between them. "Suicide," they said, 3 weeks after she signed the temporary custody papers. The playground sound seemed to fade away. Charlotte could only hear the beating of her own heart and Rebecca's shaky breathing. "Thomas has been cycling through women ever since," Rebecca continued. "He finds lonely women, women who want to help, women who dream of instant families. He makes them fall in love with Lucy and Jamie, lets them get attached, then he disappears. When they try to keep the children or go to the authorities, he threatens them. How? He has connections, people who can make your life very difficult, make you look unstable, unfit, make charges appear on your record that were never there before." Rebecca turned to face Charlotte directly. "I tried to fight him. I ended up losing my job, my apartment, and nearly my sanity. That's why I'm warning you." Charlotte's phone buzzed. A text from Thomas. "Miss me yet? Hope you're bonding with the kids. We need to talk soon." She showed Rebecca the message. The other woman paled. "He's coming back," Rebecca whispered. "That's what he does. He disappears just long enough for you to get attached. Then he returns with some sob story about why he had to leave. What does he want?" Rebecca met her eyes. "I think he's looking for the perfect woman to disappear with him permanently. Someone who won't ask questions, won't look too closely at the paperwork, won't care where the children really came from." Charlotte stood up abruptly. "I have to get back to them." "Charlotte, wait." Rebecca grabbed her arm. "Don't try to be a hero. These children have already lost too much." Charlotte hurried back to Mrs. Henderson's house, Rebecca's warnings echoing in her mind. She found Lucy and Jamie in the backyard, helping the elderly woman tend to her garden. The sight of them laughing as they watered plants with a tiny watering can made her chest tight with emotion. "Thank you so much," Charlotte told Mrs. Henderson as she gathered the children. "You've been incredibly kind. Anytime, dear. These little ones are angels." The older woman's eyes were warm, but knowing. "I hope their situation gets sorted out soon." Back at Thomas's house, Charlotte tried to maintain normalcy while her mind raced. She helped Lucy with a coloring book and built block towers with Jamie, but every sound outside made her jump. Rebecca's words haunted her. He's looking for the perfect woman to disappear with them permanently. Asterisk around 5 o'clock, as Charlotte was preparing dinner, she heard a car in the driveway. Her blood turned to ice when she recognized the sound of Thomas's engine. "Stay here and keep coloring," she told Lucy quietly. "I'll be right back." Thomas walked through the front door as if nothing had happened, carrying flowers and wearing his most charming smile. He looked exactly as he always had, tall, handsome, with those warm brown eyes that had once made her feel so safe. "Sweetheart," he said, approaching her with arms outstretched. "I'm so sorry. I can explain everything." Charlotte stepped backward, keeping distance between them. "Where were you, Thomas? Yesterday was supposed to be our wedding day." His face crumpled with what appeared to be genuine remorse. I know. There was an emergency with the children's placement. I had to handle it immediately or risk losing them to the system." "Whose children are they, Thomas?" "A client of mine. Their mother is in rehabilitation, and I'm helping with temporary care until she's stable." The lies flowed so smoothly from his lips. "I couldn't reach you in time to explain. My phone died, and everything happened so fast." Charlotte watched his performance, remembering Rebecca's description of his pattern, the sob story, the manipulation, the way he made himself appear to be the hero saving children from a terrible fate. "They've been here for weeks," she said carefully. "Lucy's diary shows they've been waiting for me specifically." Thomas's smile flickered for just a moment. "Well, yes, I thought maybe if you met them, if you saw how sweet they are, you might be open to helping. You have such a generous heart, Charlotte." "Thomas," Lucy's voice came from the kitchen doorway. Her face was wary, not excited to see him as Charlotte might have expected. "You came back." "Of course I did, princess." Thomas knelt down to Lucy's level, but Charlotte noticed the little girl didn't run to him. "Did you take good care of Miss Charlotte for me?" Lucy nodded solemnly. "She made us sandwiches and read us stories. She's nice. I told you she would be." Thomas stood and looked at Charlotte meaningfully. "We make a good team, don't we? You, me, and the children." Charlotte felt the weight of his expectation, the careful orchestration of this moment. He was waiting for her to fall into line, to accept his explanation and embrace the ready-made family he was offering. Instead, she asked, "When can they go home to their mother?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Thomas's eyes hardened for just a fraction of a second before his concerned expression returned. "Soon," he said, "very soon. But until then, they need us." Charlotte nodded slowly, pretending to accept his answer while her mind worked frantically. She needed time to plan, to figure out how to protect Lucy and Jamie from whatever Thomas was really planning. But first, she needed to get him to leave again. Charlotte forced herself to smile as Thomas settled into the living room, making himself comfortable as if the past 2 days hadn't happened. She needed to be careful, to play along until she could figure out her next move. "I should probably head home tonight," she said casually. "Get some fresh clothes, check my mail." "Of course," Thomas agreed readily. "But maybe you could come back tomorrow. The children have gotten so attached to you already." Lucy was sitting on the floor with her coloring book, but Charlotte noticed she was listening intently to every word. Jamie had retreated to the couch, sucking his thumb and watching Thomas with wary eyes. "They seem a little quiet," Charlotte observed. Thomas waved dismissively. "They're still adjusting. Change is hard for kids." He leaned forward conspiratorially. "Between you and me, I think they were starting to give up hope that anyone would care about them. You've given them something to believe in again." The manipulation was so smooth, so practiced. Charlotte wondered how many times he had delivered similar speeches to Rebecca and the other women. "What kind of work do you do exactly?" she asked. "With the placement agency, I help connect families in crisis with temporary solutions. Sometimes the system moves too slowly, and children suffer while adults figure out paperwork." Thomas's voice took on a passionate tone. "I bypass the red tape to get kids the help they need immediately." "That's very noble," Charlotte said, hating how easily the false praise came. It must be difficult work. It is, especially when you get attached. Thomas looked at Lucy and Jamie with what appeared to be genuine affection. These two have been through so much. Their mother, well, let's just say she made some very poor choices. Lucy's hand tightened on her crayon, and Charlotte saw a flash of pain cross the little girl's face. Whatever the truth about their mother, Lucy remembered her with love. "I should give you my work schedule," Charlotte said, pulling out her phone, "so you know when I'm available to help." "Actually," Thomas said carefully, "I was hoping we could discuss something. The children's situation is more complex than I initially let on. Their mother's recovery is going to take longer than expected." "How much longer?" "Months. Maybe longer." Thomas reached for Charlotte's hand. "I know this isn't what we planned when we decided to get married, but seeing you with them yesterday, Charlotte, you're a natural mother. Maybe this is fate." Charlotte felt sick but kept her expression neutral. "It's a lot to think about." "Of course it is. But we don't have to decide everything tonight." Thomas squeezed her hand. "Why don't you go home, get some rest, and we can talk more tomorrow. The children and I will be fine." As Charlotte gathered her purse, Lucy suddenly stood up. "Miss Charlotte, will you really come back tomorrow?" The fear in the little girl's voice was unmistakable. Charlotte knelt down and took Lucy's small hands in hers. "I promise," she said firmly, looking directly into Lucy's eyes. "I will come back tomorrow. Promise on something important," Lucy whispered. Charlotte touched the pearl necklace at her throat. "I promise on my grandmother's pearls." "I will not leave you." Lucy nodded solemnly, seemingly satisfied with this. Pledged out as Charlotte drove home. Her mind raced with plans. She had perhaps 12 hours before she needed to return. 12 hours to figure out how to save the children from a man who was very good at making people disappear. She pulled out her phone and called Rebecca. "I need help," Charlotte said when Rebecca answered. "And I need it tonight." Rebecca arrived at Charlotte's apartment within an hour, carrying a manila folder thick with documents. Her face was grim as she spread papers across Charlotte's kitchen table. "I've been building a case against Thomas for months," Rebecca said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Birth certificates, custody documents, medical records. Everything he's been falsifying." Charlotte stared at the papers. "How did you get all this?" "I never stopped looking for the truth about my sister's death. Sarah didn't just sign custody papers. She signed a document transferring permanent guardianship to Thomas's agency. But the agency doesn't exist. At least, not legally." "What do you mean?" Rebecca pulled out a stack of official-looking letterhead. "Golden Haven Family Services. Looks legitimate, right? Professional logo, fancy address. But when you dig deeper, the address is a mail forwarding service. The phone number goes to an answering service. There's no actual office, no other employees." Charlotte felt a chill run down her spine. So Thomas created a fake agency. "Not just fake, it's a front for something much worse. Look at this." Rebecca showed Charlotte a series of financial records. Money flows through Golden Haven from multiple sources. Some legitimate adoption agencies, some private individuals, some less traceable accounts. He's selling children. I think he's trafficking them, not in the traditional sense, but moving them between different women, different situations, keeping them off official records. Rebecca's hands shook as she organized the papers. "Lucy and Jamie aren't the only ones. I've tracked at least 6 other children who have passed through his care in the past 2 years." Charlotte sank into a chair. "Where are they now?" "That's what terrifies me. I don't know." Rebecca met Charlotte's eyes. "That's why I was so desperate to warn you. You might be his endgame with Lucy and Jamie." "What do you mean?" "Think about it. He's been cycling through women for months with these kids. Why? What's he waiting for?" Rebecca leaned forward. "Maybe he's looking for someone who won't ask questions, who won't look too closely at paperwork, who will be so grateful for an instant family that they'll disappear with him completely." Charlotte's phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. "Sweet dreams. See you tomorrow." The kids are excited to spend more time with their new mama. She showed Rebecca the message. "He's moving fast. Too fast." That's not his usual pattern. Rebecca frowned. Something spooked him. Maybe someone's getting close, or maybe he's found what he was looking for in you. What do we do? Rebecca pulled out a business card. "Detective Martinez. She's been helping me unofficially. She can't move against Thomas without solid evidence. But if we can get the children away from him safely, she can start an official investigation." How do we get them away? That's the problem. Legally, Thomas has custody documents. Even if they're fraudulent, it would take time to prove that in court, time Lucy and Jamie don't have. Charlotte stared at the documents spread across her table. "What if we don't go through legal channels? What are you thinking? You said Thomas disappears when things get complicated. What if we make things very complicated for him?" Charlotte's mind was racing. "What if we force his hand?" Rebecca looked uncertain. "Charlotte, this man is dangerous. He's made people disappear before. But he needs me to cooperate. Right now, I'm valuable to him." Charlotte stood up, pacing. "Tomorrow, I go back as planned. But I don't go alone." "What do you mean?" Charlotte turned to face Rebecca. "How would you like to meet your niece and nephew properly?" Rebecca's eyes filled with tears. "Are you sure about this?" "No," Charlotte admitted. "But I made a promise to Lucy, and I intend to keep it, one way or another. Those children are going to be safe." As they planned through the night, Charlotte couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow would change everything. Thomas had set his trap carefully, but he had made one crucial mistake. He had underestimated the power of two women who refused to let children suffer. Charlotte arrived at Thomas's house the next morning with Rebecca waiting in the car around the corner. They had agreed on a simple plan. Charlotte would go in first, assess the situation, and signal Rebecca when it was safe to approach. Lucy ran to the door when Charlotte knocked, her face lighting up with relief. "You came back. You really came back. I told you I would," Charlotte said. Kneeling to hug the little girl over Lucy's shoulder, she could see Thomas in the kitchen, making coffee and looking perfectly domestic. "Charlotte," Thomas called out cheerfully. "Perfect timing. I was just making breakfast." "Where's Jamie?" Charlotte asked Lucy quietly. "Still sleeping. He had another bad dream." Lucy's voice dropped to a whisper. "Thomas got angry when he cried. He said big boys shouldn't cry." Charlotte's jaw stiffened. She gently squeezed Lucy's hand and stepped into the kitchen where Thomas was arranging plates. "I've been reflecting on what you mentioned yesterday," Charlotte started, cautiously, "about the kids needing more stable care." Thomas's face lit up. "And I want to be involved, but I need a clearer picture of what's happening." Charlotte sat down at the kitchen table. "I'd like to speak with someone from your organization. Go over the documentation. Understand what we're signing up for." Thomas's smile faded a bit. "Well, that could be a bit tricky. The organization works differently from regular systems." "How differently?" "We focus on the children's immediate well-being rather than red tape." Thomas poured coffee, his hands slightly trembling. "Sometimes the forms are handled after the fact." Charlotte nodded slowly. "That's understandable, but surely there's someone I can talk to, a supervisor." "The children's assigned caseworker, Charlotte." "I am their caseworker." There was a subtle sharpness in Thomas's tone now. "Everything related to them goes through me." "What about their mom? Would it be possible to reach out to her?" The coffee mug fell from Thomas's hand, smashing on the kitchen floor. Hot liquid spread across the tiles, and Lucy jumped in surprise. "Their mother is not available," Thomas said as he crouched to clean up the spill. "She's in rehab, remember?" "Which center?" Charlotte asked gently. "I'd love to send her a card, just to let her know her children are safe." Thomas stood slowly, the cracks in his composure starting to show. "Why all the questions? Yesterday you seemed all in." "I'm still committed to helping, but as someone who works with children, I know how vital proper records are for their safety." Charlotte's tone remained calm. "I want to ensure we're following the law. Sometimes Thomas muttered, voice low and tense. What's legal and what's right aren't the same thing. That was Charlotte's signal. She picked up her phone and sent a short message to Rebecca. Now, you're right, Charlotte said to Thomas. We sometimes have to do what's right for the kids. Even if the paperwork isn't perfect, Thomas eased a little, misinterpreting her words. Exactly. Lucy and Jamie deserve consistency, not more red tape. They do, Charlotte agreed, which is why I brought someone who can help. The front door opened. Rebecca entered. Lucy looked surprised, but Thomas lost all color in his face. Hello, Thomas. Rebecca said softly, we need to have a conversation about my sister Sarah. Who is this? Thomas asked, his voice shaky. Rebecca crouched in front of Lucy. Hi, sweetie. I'm Rebecca. I'm your mom's sister. Lucy's eyes widened. Aunt Becky? Mama said you lived really far away. I did. But I'm here now. Rebecca's voice trembled with emotion as she gently touched Lucy. I've been searching for you and Jamie for such a long time. Thomas took a step back. There's a mix-up here. I have legal guardianship. Then show us the documents, Charlotte replied calmly. Silence followed. Outside, the sound of a car door closing echoed, and Thomas flinched. You can't. Just take them, he finally said. You don't know the full story. Then tell us, Rebecca replied. Standing tall, tell us how Sarah supposedly handed over custody to you just days before her death. Explain how your so-called agency doesn't really exist. Explain how you've been using these kids to control women. The mask Thomas wore finally dropped, revealing a colder version of himself. You truly don't understand what you're messing with, he said. The room went quiet except for the sound of small feet descending the stairs. Jamie appeared in the doorway, eyes bleary and confused by the tension. Lucy, he asked softly. What's going on? Rebecca gasped as she saw her nephew again. Jamie, she whispered through tears. Oh my boy. Thomas moved to block Rebecca. Stay back. You have no authority here. Neither do you, Charlotte said firmly. She stepped in front of the children. Rebecca, call Detective Martinez, right now. Wait, Thomas said quickly, voice almost begging. Please, just hear me out. You don't know what you're doing. These kids need me. They need their real family. Rebecca said as she pulled out her phone. Their family abandoned them. Thomas snapped, his control slipping. Sarah was unstable. She couldn't care for them. I saved them from being split up, from being lost in the system. Lucy leaned closer to Charlotte, her little fingers curling into Charlotte's. Is it true? About Mama. Rebecca crouched again, tears flowing. Your mom was unwell, honey. But she loved you and Jamie more than anything. She wanted me to take care of you. But Thomas, he took you before I could get here. You were far away. Thomas spat. Sarah made her decision. She trusted me. You took advantage of a woman in a mental health crisis. Charlotte said coldly. You preyed on her vulnerability. Thomas raked his fingers through his hair, pacing like an animal. You think foster care would have been better. Some strangers who wouldn't care. You think you can do better. You don't love them, Rebecca said gently. You use them for your own ends, just like you tried to use me. And Charlotte, and who knows how many more. They didn't understand. Thomas shouted. Jamie shrank back behind Lucy. They brought in outsiders. Asked too many questions. But Charlotte, she had potential. She could have given them a home. Charlotte's stomach turned. You never loved me. You just wanted me to take them and vanish. Thomas didn't respond. His silence confirmed everything. Where would we have gone? Charlotte asked. Someplace safe, Thomas said, eyes glinting. A new home, new names, a fresh beginning. Rebecca was now quietly talking on the phone. When Thomas noticed, he lunged toward her, but Charlotte stepped in. Don't do it, she said firmly. It's done, Thomas. It's not over until I say it is, Thomas yelled. These kids are mine. I've raised them. No, Charlotte said. You've controlled them. Look at them. Really look. Lucy and Jamie were clinging to each other, clearly terrified. They weren't grateful, they were afraid. Jamie wakes up screaming almost every night. Charlotte added, Lucy writes letters to her mom, hoping she'll come back. They're not living. Thomas, they're coping. For a fleeting moment, something flickered in Thomas's eyes, maybe guilt, maybe something else, but it faded, replaced by cold defiance. You can't prove anything, he said. They'll say I cared for them, that I protected them. Will they? Rebecca asked. Sirens echoed in the distance. Or will they tell the truth about the fear, about the women you kept bringing into their lives, then discarding? Thomas turned pale as the sirens got closer. Police cars pulled up just as he made a break for the back. Charlotte scooped up Jamie. Rebecca grabbed Lucy's hand. They shielded the children with their bodies. There's nowhere to run, Charlotte said quietly. Don't make it worse. Thomas stopped, shoulders slumped, through the window. Detective Martinez approached with 2 officers. Thomas. Williams, she called. We need a word. Lucy looked up at Rebecca, eyes wide. Are we in trouble? No, sweetheart, Rebecca said softly, brushing back her hair. You're safe now. We promise. Thomas opened the door with trembling fingers. Detective Martinez, sharp and steady, took in the scene. 2 frightened kids, 2 protective women, and a man full of secrets, Mr. Williams. We have questions regarding your agency and the custody of these minors, she said firmly. Let's continue this at the station. They're legally in my care, Thomas muttered. We'll review everything, Detective Martinez replied. She turned to Rebecca. You must be Rebecca Mitchell. Thank you for coming forward. As the officers began questioning Thomas, Charlotte knelt beside the kids. I know this feels scary, she said, but the people here are going to make sure you're okay. Are we going away again? Lucy asked. Rebecca crouched beside her. You're coming home with me, if you want, back to the house where your mama grew up. I'll tell you every story I know about her. Jamie, who had been silent through most of the morning's chaos, suddenly spoke up. Will there be other kids there? There's a really good school nearby, Rebecca said gently, and a park with the biggest swings you've ever seen, just like the one your mama used to play on. What about Miss Charlotte? Lucy asked. Looking between the 2 women who had become her anchors, Charlotte felt her heart squeeze. In just 3 days, these children had become precious to her in a way she hadn't expected. But unlike Thomas, she understood that love meant doing what was best for them, not what served her own needs. Miss Charlotte will visit, Rebecca said, looking at Charlotte with grateful eyes. If she wants to, and if you want her to. I would love that, Charlotte said, meaning every word. You 2 are very special to me, as Detective Martinez led Thomas away in handcuffs. He turned back one last time. You don't understand what you've done. He called to Charlotte. I was giving them a family. No, Charlotte replied firmly. You were stealing their family. There's a difference. After Thomas was gone, the house felt different, lighter somehow. Despite the gravity of the situation, a social worker arrived to begin the process of transitioning the children to Rebecca's custody. And Charlotte found herself helping Lucy pack the few belongings that were truly hers. Miss Charlotte, Lucy said as she carefully placed a worn stuffed rabbit into a small suitcase. Will you really visit us? As often as you'll have me, Charlotte promised. And maybe sometimes you can come visit me too. Would you like that? Lucy nodded solemnly, then surprised Charlotte by wrapping her small arms around her waist. Thank you for keeping your promise. You didn't leave us. Charlotte held the little girl close, thinking about promises and love and the difference between controlling someone and truly caring for them. She had learned more about real love in 3 days with these children than in 2 years with Thomas. I'll never leave you, she whispered, even when we're apart. I'll always be here if you need me. 3 weeks later, Charlotte sat in Rebecca's kitchen in Portland, watching Jamie carefully arrange toy cars on the floor while Lucy helped her aunt prepare lunch. The house was filled with the kind of comfortable chaos that only comes with children who feel truly safe. The blue car goes here, Jamie explained to Charlotte with a serious concentration of a 5-year-old, because it needs to visit the red car's house. That makes perfect sense, Charlotte agreed, marveling at how much he had changed. The fearful, thumb-sucking little boy was blossoming into a chatty, curious child who asked endless questions about everything. "Charlotte, can you help me reach the plates?" Lucy called from the kitchen. She had grown to inches in Rebecca's care. Or perhaps she was simply standing taller now that the weight of worry had been lifted from her small shoulders. As Charlotte helped set the table, she noticed the photographs Rebecca had scattered throughout the house, pictures of Sarah as a child, as a young mother, holding her babies. Lucy spent long minutes studying these photos each day, asking questions about her mother that Rebecca answered with patience and love. "Tell us again about when Mama was little," Lucy said as they sat down to eat. It had become her favorite request. Rebecca smiled. "Cutting sandwiches into triangles the way Sarah used to. Well, when your mama was about your age, she decided she wanted to paint her bedroom purple. Not just the walls, the ceiling, the furniture. Even tried to paint the windows." Jamie giggled. "Did she get in trouble?" "Oh, she got in trouble all right. But you know what? Grandma and Grandpa let her keep one purple wall because they said it showed how creative she was." Charlotte watched this exchange with a full heart. This was what family looked like, not the forced, desperate attachment Thomas had tried to create, but the natural, growing connection between people who chose to love each other. "Miss Charlotte," Lucy said suddenly, "are you sad that you didn't get married?" Charlotte considered the question carefully. A month ago, she would have said yes. She had believed Thomas was her future, her happily ever after. Now she understood that what she had thought was love was actually just the illusion. Thomas had carefully crafted double quotes. "No, sweetheart, I'm not sad," she said honestly. "Sometimes when we think we want something, it turns out it wasn't what we needed at all. Like when I thought I wanted ice cream for breakfast." Jamie asked. "Exactly like that." Charlotte laughed. After lunch, Rebecca pulled Charlotte aside while the children played in the backyard. "I can't thank you enough for what you did, for believing them, for protecting them, for helping me find them." "They protected each other," Charlotte said, watching Lucy push Jamie on the tire swing Rebecca had installed. "They're remarkable kids. They ask about you constantly when you're not here." Rebecca said quietly, "You know you're always welcome, right? Not just to visit, but if you ever wanted to move out here, start fresh." Charlotte had been thinking about exactly that. Portland was beautiful, and her teaching credentials would transfer easily. But more than that, she had discovered something about herself in those 3 terrible, wonderful days. She was stronger than she had known, more capable of real love than she had imagined. "I've actually been looking at job openings," Charlotte admitted. "There's an elementary school not far from here that's hiring for the fall." Rebecca's face lit up. Really? These kids have been through enough changes. They need consistency, people they can count on." Charlotte smiled. "Besides, I made Lucy a promise." "What promise?" Charlotte watched Lucy help Jamie climb higher on the swing, her patient voice drifting across the yard as she encouraged her little brother. "I promised I wouldn't leave them," she said simply, "and I intend to keep the promise." 2 months after that first terrible day, Charlotte stood in the doorway of her new classroom at Riverside Elementary in Portland. Boxes of teaching supplies sat waiting to be unpacked, and through the window she could see the playground where Lucy and Jamie would play during recess. In just a few weeks, her phone buzzed with a text from Rebecca. "Kids are making you a welcome to Portland banner. Fair warning, it involves a lot of glitter." Charlotte smiled, typing back, "The more glitter, the better." The decision to move had been easier than she'd expected. Her principal in Chicago had been understanding, even supportive when Charlotte explained she was relocating to help care for children who had been through trauma. Her parents had been surprised but ultimately proud of their daughter's courage to start over. "Miss Charlotte, Miss Charlotte." Lucy's voice echoed down the empty hallway as she ran toward the classroom, Rebecca following with a more sedate Jamie, who was carefully carrying what appeared to be a very glittery creation. "We brought your banner," Lucy announced proudly, "and Jamie made you a picture of your new house." Charlotte knelt down to admire Jamie's artwork, a crayon drawing of a small house with an enormous garden and what might have been either a cat or a very oddly shaped dog. "It's beautiful," she said sincerely. "Is that going to be my pet?" "It's a cat named Whiskers," Jamie explained seriously. "Because cats are good for people who live alone. They keep you company, but they don't need as much taking care of as dogs." Charlotte exchanged a meaningful look with Rebecca over the children's heads. Jamie's thoughtfulness, his concern for Charlotte's well-being, was just one of the many ways the children had grown since leaving Thomas's house. "Actually," Charlotte said carefully, "I was thinking maybe I wouldn't live alone. Maybe I'd like some roommates who could help me take care of Whiskers." Lucy's eyes went wide. "Real roommates? Like us?" "Well, that would be up to your Aunt Rebecca," Charlotte said. "But I was thinking, my house has a big backyard, and there's a really good school nearby, and I get lonely eating dinner by myself every night." Rebecca sat down on one of the small classroom chairs, her eyes suspiciously bright. "Charlotte, are you sure? Taking on 2 children full-time, it's a big responsibility." "I know it is." Charlotte looked at Lucy and Jamie, these 2 remarkable children who had taught her what real love looked like. "But the thing is, I don't think I'd be taking them on. I think we'd be taking on life together, like a real family," Lucy asked quietly. "Like a real family," Charlotte confirmed. Jamie, who had been quietly thinking, suddenly brightened. "Will you help me learn to ride a bike? Aunt Rebecca says she's too scared of me falling down." "I am not too scared," Rebecca protested with a laugh. "I just think Charlotte might be better at running alongside wobbly bicycles." "I would love to teach you to ride a bike," Charlotte told Jamie. "And Lucy, I could help you with that book report you've been worrying about." "This is really happening?" Lucy asked, her voice full of wonder. Charlotte thought about the path that had brought her here, the wedding that never happened, the man who had tried to manipulate her into his twisted version of love, the children who had shown her what family really meant. "It's really happening," she said. "If you want it to." Lucy threw her arms around Charlotte's neck. "I want it too. We both want it too." Over Lucy's shoulder, Charlotte met Rebecca's eyes. They had all been through so much trauma, so much uncertainty, but somehow, from the ashes of Thomas's deception, something beautiful was growing. "So," Rebecca said with a grin, "when do we start looking for this house with the big backyard?" Charlotte hugged Lucy tighter and reached out to pull Jamie into their embrace. "How about today?" For the first time in months, Charlotte's future stretched out before her, clear and bright and full of possibility. 1 year later, Charlotte stood in the kitchen of their yellow house with the wraparound porch, watching Jamie race around the backyard with Whiskers, who had turned out to be a remarkably patient orange tabby. Lucy sat at the kitchen table, carefully writing in a new journal, one without the desperate, fearful entries of her old diary. "What are you writing about today?" Charlotte asked, setting down a plate of after-school cookies. "About how Jamie learned to ride his bike without training wheels," Lucy said proudly, "and how you only had to run behind him for like 5 minutes before he got it." 5 very long minutes, Charlotte laughed, remembering her panic as Jamie wobbled precariously down the sidewalk. Rebecca emerged from the living room where she had been grading papers. She had taken a job at the local community college and moved into a small apartment just 3 blocks away, close enough to be part of their daily lives, far enough to give Charlotte and the children space to build their own routines. "The adoption paperwork came through," Rebecca said quietly, holding up an official-looking envelope. Charlotte's breath caught. They had been working through the legal process for months, first to establish Rebecca's guardianship, then to arrange for Charlotte to adopt the children as well. It had been complicated, requiring lawyers and social workers and court appearances. But everyone involved had seen how well the children were thriving. "Does this mean?" Charlotte began. "It means it's official," Rebecca said with tears in her eyes. "Lucy and Jamie are legally your children now too." Lucy looked up from her journal, her face serious. "Does this mean you can't change your mind about keeping us?" Charlotte knelt down beside Lucy's chair and took her small hands. "Sweetheart, I couldn't change my mind even if I wanted to. You and Jamie aren't just my children now. You're part of my heart." "Forever and always?" Lucy asked, using the phrase that had become their family motto. "Forever and always," Charlotte confirmed. Jamie came running in from the backyard, grass stains on his knees and dirt smudged on his cheek. "Aunt Rebecca, did you see me catch the ball with one hand?" "I did. You're getting so good at baseball." Rebecca laughed, ruffling his hair. As they sat around the table sharing cookies and milk, Charlotte thought about how much had changed. The children still had therapy appointments to work through their trauma, and there were still nights when bad dreams woke them. But there were also bike rides and bedtime stories. Art projects stuck to the refrigerator, and the comfortable chaos of a family that chose each other every single day. "Miss Charlotte," Jamie said suddenly, "do you think Mama would like our house?" It was a question he asked sometimes, usually when he was feeling particularly happy. Charlotte and Rebecca had learned to answer honestly, keeping Sarah's memory alive while helping the children build new, joyful associations. "I think your mama would love seeing how happy you both are," Charlotte said softly. "I think she would love seeing you safe and loved and free to be silly kids." Lucy reached over and squeezed Charlotte's hand. "I think she would like you too, because you keep your promises." As the afternoon sun streamed through their kitchen windows, Charlotte realized she had found something she hadn't even known she was looking for. Not the perfect wedding or the perfect man, but the perfect imperfection of real love, messy and challenging, and absolutely worth every difficult moment. Outside, Whiskers meowed from his perch on the porch railing, and Jamie ran to let him in. Lucy carefully closed her journal and went to help set the table for dinner. Rebecca smiled at Charlotte across the room, and Charlotte felt the deep satisfaction of a promise kept, a family chosen, a love that would last. This was home. This was family. This was enough. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. See you in the next story.